Alright, we're going to be talking about special offense, because special offense is pretty good, and it's also the main team style that I like to use the most. And if you couldn't tell by my previous videos, yes, I am a huge fan of special offense, which is why I'm making a dedicated video on it right now, on why it has a lot of potential, why it's very, very consistent and very good, and why it also has very crippling weaknesses. But also how special offense can, potentially patch up those weaknesses. Because every team style in this metagame has weaknesses, and some styles are able to compensate for those weaknesses better than others. Take, for example, TSS, which is the most dominant and most prepped for style in the entire metagame. The reason why that's the case is because it is the best and most consistent, at least historically, it has been the best and most consistent style in the metagame, period. And hence why it's referred to as like the gold standard among veteran players. Nowadays, even something like anti-TSS being a TSS team just supposed to match up into other forms of TSS, are basically TSS, but built in a way to match up into itself. That's why it's referred to as TSS. Rarely these days will you ever see pure TSS. It's either going to be anti-TSS or something that falls in between. But TSS is still very relevant because it's still the best style, and at no point should you ever assume that it's not going to be brought or potentially brought into a game. So, how does special offense fit into all this? Special offense is incredible into TSS. That's the main reason why. And that's kind of the reason why it's so good in the first place, is because this style has a favorable matchup into many of the styles of the metagame. Now, it is true that it isn't so dominant at that it's going to just crush everything. If special offense were so dominant that no matter what style it went against, it's going to be victorious, Dugtrio would have been banned in a heartbeat. In fact, that's how Dugtrio got banned in future generations. Dugtrio was banned in Generation 5 because the offensive teams that it enabled were way, way too powerful. And in fact, stuff like Sun, for example, they tried to restrict chlorophyll and all of that first. They tried to restrict its offensive potential. And then when the player base realized that it also made certain defensive styles extremely powerful and too consistent, to the point where not bringing it would be competitively putting yourself at a disadvantage, they banned it. DPP is a different story, because in DPP, Dugtrio got banned for being too good on defensive teams, or rather, the teams that it enabled were unstoppable defensively. Because there was no way to divide and conquer between Jirachi, Clefable, and Dugtrio. It was actually impossible, and you could facilitate situations in the builder and in the battle to where your opponent just lost on the matchup. Fortunately, special offense isn't that good, because if it was good, if it was that good, then it would have been banned. And thankfully, it's not banned. But it is good enough to where it can get a bunch of, favorable matchups. Now, rarely is there ever going to be a point where special offense is just going to win a matchup right off the rip. In fact, a lot of matchups are determined by how you, the player, play it. That's the big thing of special offense. Special offense is only as good as the player who's using it, and only as good as the matchup as well. Because there are matchups and sets and Pokemon that are way more difficult to deal with than others. And we'll get into these problematic team styles and problematic Pokemon as we go on. But the biggest reason as to why special offense is probably the best offensive style that you could use overall, and why it's more consistent than mag offense and mixed offense, is because of those favorable matchups, the way how it favors, you, the player using it. If you outplay and you make the right decisions and you trap the stuff that you're supposed to trap, you're probably going to win 80% of the time. The other 20% of the time, you got to worry about rock slide flinches and hydros missing, but that's stuff outside of your control, and it really isn't the fault of special offense in particular. It's kind of the fault of offense in general, because offense is forced to, run more risky strategies, like using Hydro Pump, like using Thunder and Fire Blast, and moves that can, miss, that add more variance. And hell, you see with some of the teams here, special offense does have to make compromises defensively, because it's an offensive team. Offensive teams don't really care about that much defensive utility, not to the point where you would restrict your own offensive potential, because you still need defensive synergies in the team. In fact, when you look at this team here, this team is defensively sound. You got a water resistant Suicune, so you're able to pivot around stuff like Swampert and other Suicune. You have your electric resistant Raikou. Now, Raikou isn't like the best electric resist in the world because it gets ruined by status, but it still technically resists electric, and therefore it still has that defensive utility, and it's also a massive offensive threat in its own right. And then you have Dragon Dance Tyranitar, which beats Zapdos in the 1v1. You have Metagross, which pressures Zapdos very, very well. You have your own Zapdos, which pressures opposing Zapdoses, especially in sand, very, very, very well. And, Metagross acts as a normal resist, so you're able to, switch into stuff like Snorlax, opposing Metagross. Well, Metagross isn't a normal type, but it also is a steel type, so it resists itself. It's the same principle. It also resists rock, which is very, very important, because this is the generation where rock types are the best. Well, it's only 2 rock types that are the best, but those rock types are so good, they pretty much define the metagame offensively. And kind of are the... remember how I was talking about variants earlier? Aerodactyl and Tyranitar are the ones that kind of add the most variance to the game because of Rock Slide. Rock Slide can... The biggest fear end game is when you have Suicune in on a +1 DD Tar, and you're thinking to yourself, oh god, is it going to flinch? Is my Suicune going to miss? Their Tyranitar can also miss, and, so on and so forth. It's at the end of the day, offense is always going to be taking that risk of, I don't have the longevity to soak up Dragon Dance Tyranitar's hits, and then beat it, and then or force it out, and then just dust your hands off, and then that's that. You're very much on a timer from the very start of the battle. And that's kind of the nature with all offense, but the great thing with special offense is everything synergizes so well. Like with Tyranitar here. DD Tar breaks through stuff like Swampert, Milotic, Claydol, which is very, very helpful for these guys. And it adds, it's Tyranitar. It's the best Pokemon in the metagame. It also adds Sand, which is very, very helpful for Zapdos, very, very helpful for itself, because Tyranitar mandates certain checks in the builder and all of that, which you, as the player, can take advantage of. So here, I use DD Tar to break stuff, because Adamant DD Tar is an incredible breaker, and sometimes is even a great sweeper. Break stuff very well, and once you break stuff with Tyranitar and Dugtrio, your 2 dogs and Zapdos are going to go crazy. And then Metagross is kind of like a supporting guy, but is still a really good offensive Pokemon, because it takes hits and dishes out good hits in return. So the defensive synergy is there, and you do need defensive synergy with offensive teams, because without defensive synergy, you're going to get run over by other offensive teams. But it's so easy to create like good, consistent defensive cores, like you see here, or you just see like a pattern in general of Zapdos, Suicune, Rock Resist, or something else that can take hits for the other guys. That's because these Pokemon work so well with each other and synergize so well that they're able to pressure for one another. The biggest problem with something like Mag Offense is that you aren't able to really do that effectively, because there's always going to be that one Pokemon that is a giant pain in the ass, like, Gengar, or like an offensive water type, or even like Pokemon they themselves use. Like Mag Offense tends to have, it is completely and utterly destroyed by Salamence, usually. Salamence tears through Mag Offense like nothing else. And even Mixed Offense, to an extent, gets completely destroyed by Salamence, to a lesser degree. In Mixed Offense, both teams are kind of memed because of how mid I won't be that guy and just kind of regurgitate what BKC says and, oh, Snorlax is bad, Snorlax is terrible. It's still a threat. And in fact, Snorlax is one of the biggest threats to these team styles because, it takes hits well enough to where it's going to be able to throw out its normal attacks and at least force you to trade out with something, which is not good. It mandates you to have a plan for stuff like that. But I think that isn't really a lot to ask for. I mean, hell, you look at a team like this with Jinx. Jinx is the biggest boomer bust defensively lacking Pokemon in the game. Defensively, it doesn't do shit. But for a team like this, it sleeps stuff. It's really annoying in the early game. It forces damage onto like certain Pokemon that you otherwise wouldn't be able to force. And then after they deal with Jinx, your opponent, they have to deal with this, which, if they didn't lose to Jinx already, through Ice Beam crits and freezes or the fact that they were forced to give up a Pokemon or two at the beginning of the match, they might just lose to the giant offensive threats that are waiting in the back. That's assuming that Jinx lands Lovely Kiss, which is a headache of its own, but that's more of a Jinx issue and not really a team issue. Hell, even something like this, structure-wise, this is the most generic. I think this is the most basic special offense squad that you can get. Suicune lead, so you don't have to play iffy games around like sub-lead tars and stuff like that. You just have a massive offensive threat right out of the gate. You don't have to play games of Ments either. And then you have, your special mons, Agility Zapdos, your Calm Minders. You even have a Sleeper and Hypnogar. Gengar is great on these styles. You don't see it as much because Gengar much prefers spike stuff, but Gengar, of course, is a very good fit on these type of teams. And if we look at this resource here, in terms of like the matchups, I mean, it's pretty even, especially with something like all the Dragon Dancers and offensive pokes. But if you outplay, you're going to destroy this, and that's the thing about special offense. Or just most offensive styles in general, you are mandated to outplay the opponent. And that's kind of like the biggest argument of why people say offense is bad, because you have to outplay the opponent. You have to outplay with the opponent too with defensive teams. Shut up. It's not as if defense is that fucking brain dead. You do actively have to make decisions with defensive teams, especially when it's defense on defense, and you get those long slugging matches that are 200, 300, 400 turns long. There's definitely decision making to be made there. You know, if it were so good that we're brain dead, defensive teams would have had to been nerfed in some way. You know, I use the same argument for DPP. You know, if defensive teams are so powerful that playing them doesn't really take any skill or remove skill from the equation, those teams would have been nerfed in some way. But that's just simply not the case. Defensive teams, you know, require as much skill as offensive ones. It's just you need to play them differently. That's just what the deal is. And as we go down the list, like the standard TSS, as I mentioned before, special offense destroys this because you trap Blissey, you know, you completely mow through. I mean, what after Blissey's gone, where's their water resist? It's nowhere to be found. So Suicune sets up the +1, dead. All everything is gonna die to Suicune. Same thing here. Oh, Lax? Well, Lax sucks. So dead, gone. Moving on, next match. And you know, this is basically special offense. This here, you should also completely decimate, you know, the physically based P2 stuff. I mean, P2 itself is very annoying, sure, but special offense has a lot of tools to completely humiliate Porygon too, like sub-calm minders, baton pass stuff, using your own Snorlax. As much as I despise Snorlax without spin or suit or any of that, Snorlax can actually fit on special offense, and is actually really good into special offense mirrors. So if you have like a Snorlax special offense squad and you're going against an opposing special offense, you're going to have a pretty massive advantage, because if they don't have sand and they don't have spikes and they don't have the usual stuff that teams use to normally deal with Snorlax, they're going to have a way harder time dealing with you. That isn't to say that, you know, the opponent using this can't win, but my point is like this, you know, this is basically special offense, whereas this, you don't really see this as much, and when you do, special offense tends to destroy it. Pursuit Tar stuff, this is kind of the part of the video where we're going to be transitioning into the problematic matchups, which are, of course, more defensive leaning. Because otherwise, special offense tends to completely tear through other offensive teams and other, you know, even like balance stuff. And that isn't to say that it isn't good against defense. It absolutely has potential to be good against defense. You just have to work way harder and actively outplay them more than they're outplaying you. And there are some matchups where it is impossible to win. So like something like this, you know, if you were to run into Scarm Doug, you know, at all, you know, if they had like Scarm Doug, Calm Mind, Blissey, it's over. If you don't immediately double Doug Trio in on Blissey in some way, Blissey gets a Calm Mind and it's over. It's done. You have to be, you know, a Jedi or somebody with a lot of foresight to be able to see through that. And it's technically possible to win it, but you have to, you know, have to be out of your mind to do so. And I'm merely a mortal man, unlike some of the players that play this game. And sometimes being, you know, you have to transcend your mortality to win some of these games. But, you know, something like this isn't too bad on paper, like the Fortress stuff, but the Fortress stuff, it is like a mixed bag. It could either be the easiest game of your life, or it could be the worst, most agonizing way to lose on planet Earth. And it's complete hell. And there's an actual replay of Fortress that I'll be showing later on the video, but it will give you a good view of why, like, Fortress is actually very problematic for special offense more than Scarm, because Scarm is a lot easier to threaten with powerful electric attacks from Zapdos and hydro pumps that it frankly doesn't really want to be taking at the beginning of the match. But and of course this is like it's special offense but with spikes. The Jolt Spike stuff. It's basically a mirror match, but they have a spiker. That's basically it. It's a mirror match that I've had to play like 1,000 times, and it can go either way because you're both an offensive team. It's going to be the same song and dance with variants and stuff like that. So, it just comes down to who makes the right moves and who can capitalize on what. And then there comes this, and I think, I copied and pasted a bunch of defensive stuff that I have in my builder. This isn't really defensive, but I'll get to why this is an issue later. Yeah, it's time for us to talk about Scarm Doug. So Scarm Doug is probably it is the embodiment of why special offense is flawed. So Doug Trio is mandatory on special offense because Doug Trio allows you to remove all of the defensive stuff that gets in your way. Blissey, Celebi, Snorlax. Like if you chip Snorlax in the range to be taken out by Doug Trio, you dug the Snorlax and then Snorlax is dead. That's it. Even like Magneton, something like Magneton or pesky Pokemon like Jirachi, you can remove those too. But here, as you can see, the problem of this style becomes very very glaring, and that's special offense oftentimes is weak to the very tool that they use, which is Doug Trio. And I'm going to show you guys. Now, as you can see, we go back to the special offense page. A team like this only has 2 Pokemon that are weak to Doug, right? Including Doug itself, because Doug traps something, and you're usually kind of mandated to use like a more bulkier Doug so the Doug Trio can take hits. You don't really want a faster Doug because a faster Doug limits on what you can trap. Yes, you do miss out on trapping Dragon Dance Tyranitar. Yes, that limits your potential in some way. But also, the bulk on Doug Trio allows you to better trap Celebi and Jirachi. And Celebi and Jirachi, you want to take those out before their own Doug Trio goes and traps you. So, when we look at a team like this, a lot of the sequencing that happens with an offensive team and where who wins or what is decided usually in the first few turns of the battle. So here, Zapdos leads and Scarm leads. 90% of the time, the Scarm is going to stay in. Why is Scarm going to stay in? Because Skarmory can take a Thunderbolt from Zapdos and gets up that 1 spike. Players know that Zapdos can OHKO Scarm, but it's not favored, usually. So they'll go for that spike, knowing that they don't really lose any advantage out of it or anything like that. So they're going to spike on you. Now, Doug Trio is a grounded Pokemon, so it's going to take spikes damage. Now, usually that's not that big of a deal. But when you're trapping something like Blissey and Celebi, who are going to end up living the initial attack, and they're end up going to counter-attacking you, that spike is going to matter a lot. Because that 1 layer of spike mandates you to... The reason why you use bulky Doug Trio to begin with is because of this steel bird fucker over here. Is because if spikes are in the picture and you only have a minimal amount of bulk, that bulk ain't going to mean shit because the spikes are in the picture. And then, Blissey takes you out anyway, the game's dead. Oh, Celebi lived, that's it. It's going to come in later on and recover on your Zapdos. Oh, Jirachi is going to wish and sit there and be a little asshole. Spikes are very much everything here. And the reason why Scarm lead is so significant is because they're going to get that spike no matter what. Now you might be asking yourself, Darth Tyranus, you could just use Magnet on Zapdos, yeah, and forego leftovers, which have significant consequences. Now I'm not saying that something like Magnet Zapdos couldn't work. In fact, completely denying your opponent of any spikes, period, and their own Skarmory, mind you, is an excellent trait to have. Completely removing their ability to play that game at all is excellent. I will not deny that. But again, it comes down to making compromises. You have to make a compromise on your lead Zapdos that, okay, I OHKO Skarm lead so they can't do this. That's fine. The issue is feasibly, how are you going to trap this? Because they're going to have this, and this. Oh, I'm going to set up on your Jirachi, or your Celebi of Jirachi. This little fucker comes in. Oh, you think you're going to do something with Zapdos? Well, I have 2 electric resists on top of the Blissey that I already have. It's not going to be easy to get Blissey in. It's not going to be easy at all to completely and utterly... That's the whole reason why Mag Offense has problems with Skarmory, even with Magneton, because that one layer of Spike is going to completely decide the entire game. It doesn't matter if Skarm isn't around to wall stuff. It doesn't matter if Skarm is there to throw itself at the enemy and kill itself so Dugtrio can trap something. It doesn't matter. None of it matters as long as it gets that Spike down. And that Spike is going to determine whether if this matchup is playable at all. And pray tell, we go back a bit and we look at this team here. This has Tar lead. Right? So, that layer of Spike that I was talking about, because I have Tar lead, even though I have Sand, and Sand would be excellent in this matchup, that doesn't matter because Skarm gets a free Spike. And some of you guys might be like, oh, well, just don't lead with Tar. It's not as simple as not leading with Tar. It's not, because then there comes the issue of, oh, what if I want Sand turn 1? You're never going to be able to dictate what you want in what situation. Tar lead for some games is going to end up being amazing for you. Other games, you're going to be completely screwed because Skarmory is just going to stay in on the Zapdos and get its second layer of spikes. And now you're completely screwed because, disregard the fact that you see a Calm Mind Blissey on your screen. How the fuck are you going to be able to not only trap Blissey, but also trap Celebi and, let's just say, theoretically, that this team had to go against this. You have to do the following. You have to lure Celebi in, with Tar or whatever, and not get dugged. And the stuff that scares out Skarm and Suicune, like Zapdos, they have 2 fucking electric resists and a Blissey, and good luck getting Blissey in when they could just toss out their electric resists at you. The number 1 offensive tool that you have to deal with them doesn't do anything because they're just like, no, I'm not letting you trap my Blissey. It's not going to happen. I am getting a restraining order with you and my Blissey, and Blissey's never going to come out. It's never going to get trapped. And they will sack their entire team and facilitate a game state where Blissey is the last one standing between Dugtrio, and there's 2 layer spikes up, and you're fucking dead, and then they PP stall your EQs, and then you're screwed. And you can't do anything. That isn't to say that this matchup here isn't doable. It's possible with the right match. In fact, that's why I've been experimenting more with fighting types like Machamp, because, as you can see, Machamp does pretty well here. You know, like Celebi doesn't really appreciate taking HP Bug. This little fucker right here doesn't like taking +1 cross chops. Claydol tends to get 2-hit KO'd and completely destroyed. So it's not as if it's completely unplayable. But the matchup is so in favor of the person with all of these layered defensive stuff that it's kind of just like you run into that with the team with Tar lead, and it's kind of done so. Now, yes, if I were to load Jinx into this, Jinx would do better into this, because Jinx, taunt Jinx puts this thing to sleep. This comes in and you could set up on that. This comes in, you could set up on that. It's not entirely impossible, and you at least have your foot in the door. It's still a giant pain in the ass, because if you're using Jinx lead, you don't have Sand. And trust me, Sand plays a very big part in trapping Blissey, and it determines whether or not you're going to be able to successfully trap it or not sometimes. Or even if you have to fully kill it to begin with, because if you have Sand, and let's say you knock Blissey down over to 20%, and then you send in your Zapdos, if they don't have Weather Clear, that Blissey is dead. It's not going to be able to take a Thunderbolt. It's not going to be able to do whatever it wants. It's not going to be able to do anything. That Blissey's dead. It's dead. It's gone. It's over with. So, that's usually why Special Offense tends to do well into more balanced cores, because more balanced cores tend to be a lot more lenient on defensive pressure, and tend to favor a mix of defensive and offensive pressure. When you go against something that's purely defensive like this, where, and usually the knee-jerk response to this would be, oh, just use a Suicune set that beats. It's not as simple as using sub-Calm Mind Suicune, right? As good as sub-Calm Mind Roar Suicune is, because it completely humiliates Blissey and Milo stuff, I will point out that this little fucker is here, right? So, you have to facilitate a situation where Skarm is denied of spikes completely. You are able to successfully trap the Celebi, and then use a Suicune set that is specifically engineered to not only beat Calm Mind Blissey, but it also beats Milotic. That's feasible. You can definitely create a game plan to beat that, for sure. But if we're just strictly talking about these teams here, none of these teams are going to be able to beat that. No way. You cannot beat this with any of this. It's not possible. It can't be done. Unless the person who's using the defensive team messes up or misplays. If they play, they don't even have to play perfectly. They just have to play in a way that's optimal throughout the battle. You're screwed. You're done. It's over. You might as well forfeit turn 2. That's it. Thankfully, this is like the worst matchup that you're going to have to deal with. By far. This is the only matchup for like the majority of Special Offense that is basically impossible. The only other one that's basically impossible is this. Now, normally Salamence isn't that big of a threat for Special Offense, because DD Salamence still has to set up and then go through the pain of setting up. And Mixment tends to not do well into all of the Calm Mind spammers, because it's relying on special attacks and you're raising your special defense all the time. And if you're using Suicune and Starmie, then Mixments isn't going to be able to do anything. In fact, you welcome the sight of Mixments with Special Offense, because then your Suicune gets a free turn to do this. Your Starmie gets a free turn to do this. Your Zapdos gets a free turn to do so on and so forth. Choice Band is a completely different story, because outside of lead Suicune, Choice Band matches up very well against lead Zapdos, because it can just OHKO it. It matches up very well against Tyranitar, because it can just OHKO it. And there's no way to know that your opponent has Choice Band Salamence turn 1. It's impossible. So whenever there's a lead Salamence, you always gotta like take a risk turn one. Do I baton pass expecting a Blissey or a Snorlax? Do I stay in an attack? Do I do this? Do I play it safe? There's always going to be consequences of doing what you're doing. If you play it safe and it ends up being a CB Salamence, well, your Zapdos isn't dead. That's cool. If you played it safe and then they go into a Snorlax and then you went into your unboosted Suicune, oh, well, fuck. If you baton pass as they switch to Blissey, you get to trap Blissey for free turn 2. That's literally the best possible turn that can happen. But and then if they go into Snorlax, well, that sucks because you can't really go into an attacking Pokemon because now they have minus attack. It's a giant pain in the ass of Mence. Mence lead, unless if you have Suicune lead, in which case you don't have to worry about any of this. You know, none of this is really relevant then. The only relevant part with Suicune that is going to come into play is that Snorlax is going to switch in. Now, obviously, Dual Blob is an issue, because Snorlax, as I mentioned before, kind of mandates that something trades out with it, and oftentimes, that's kind of how you have to play a special offense. You want to force Snorlax to trade with something. Thing is that you're using beat-up Dugtrio, and it's going to be a weaker Dug, so EQ isn't going to be doing as much to Blissey, and Blissey can run counter, and you don't want to get countered, because then your whole strategy is ruined. The issue here is that Snorlax is a Pokemon that mandates you to trade out. That's one Pokemon on your side that's going to be dead. They're not going to have their Snorlax anymore. You're not going to have that Pokemon that you have either, which is usually fine. But in the context of this, if you choose to trade Suicune out with whatever, right? Or you choose to go in the Metagross, then you have to deal with this. And dealing with this isn't going to be very fun when Snorlax is going to be switching into your Zapdos all day because you don't have Sand. And they have Weather Clear, so even if you do have Sand, oh, and their Blissey is Sing. Oh, and they have a Blissey and H-Way. Yeah, you're not winning this, ever. It's not going to happen. Because Snorlax can mandate something to trade out. Blissey, you aren't really going to be able to trade Blissey, realistically. And even if, you do the impossible task of killing the Snorlax and trapping the Blissey, you kill both of the special walls, you still have to deal with a full health Suicune and a Choice Band Salamence, which can come in on your Celebi, come in on your Jirachi, and threaten Okos for the rest of the game. It's not going to be fun dealing with that. And even if those two go down, look, there's a Magneton right there, lying in wait to switch in on your Zapdos and fuck around and be annoying little shit. There's always... You're always going to have to deal with something on these type of teams. And with Dual Blob, it's just kind of, fuck it. You're not winning this. So, there are matchups that are impossible for special offense. For the most part, you can create teams that destroy both of these. At least in terms of special offense. A lot of the time, it's more trouble than it's worth. And at that point, you might as well just use a different archetype if you are expecting this in a tournament setting. And then you got the last three, which are problematic, but aren't auto losses if you verse them. First one we're going to talk about is this. Now, on paper, you might be thinking, Darth Tyros, you're a fool. This isn't a bad matchup. Hear me out. So, under normal circumstances, you have Metagross, it's going to rock slide your Zapdos, it's going to then try and pivot around with, like, Celebi. You can trap Celebi, and then your dog's going to get P2'd. And P2 is an annoying little shit that you're going to have to deal with because of status and blah, blah, blah. That Pokemon's annoying. And then Suicune's annoying, and for the most part, you can deal with this, right? You can deal with all of this. The issue is this asshole right here, which is Select Heracross. Because a large number of the time, special offense doesn't use sand at all, or doesn't use Salamence. You can fit Salamence, by the way. Salamence can fit on special offense. It actually fits on special offense pretty well. But most of the time, you're not going to be using a Salamence. You're not going to really be using a Tyranitar most of the time. You are going to have a Metagross, and usually your response to something like a Heracross would be, oh shit, blow up on it and then trap it with Dugtrio. You can't really do that when there's a P2 in the picture and it removes your Dugtrio. And you don't want to keep the Celebi alive because the Celebi is going to be annoying throughout the game to your Zapdos, to your Suicune. You just want to get rid of it and just suffer the consequences later on. That isn't to say that Heracross is, like, impossible to deal with. In a late game scenario, if your opponent plays it right, Select Heracross can just win. Right? Sets up on something, it takes like a Hydro from Suicune +1. Because Heracross is reasonably bulky. It's not like Medicham, where the second it gets hit, and it's just dead. Because that's the biggest problem with Medicham, is that while it is really powerful, if it gets hit one time, that's it. It's probably dead. Whereas Heracross is actually reasonably bulky and can actually take numerous hits. And you don't have spikes to be able to more reasonably manage that. So it's going to be a lot harder dealing with Select Heracross. Now, yes, theoretically, Heracross can just miss, and then that's it. But, you don't want to be in a game state where you're like, please miss, please. You don't want that. Realistically, you kind of want the game in your hands and in your control. At no point do you want that control to slip. Because the whole point of an offensive team is to have as much control and power over the match as possible. The second that you start losing pressure and command over the match is probably when you're going to start losing. If not, you've lost already, right? And Heracross is kind of one of those things where, it occasionally, it's kind of one of those Pokemon that people will disrespect a bit, because people are like, oh, my Megahorn is trash, I'm fine with my team being weak to this guy because he sucks. And then it shows up, and then you're like, oh, fuck, It isn't to say that this is a bad matchup, it's just a matchup that could very well not be in your favor because of the Suicune, which can stall your own Suicune, the P2 issue, it just staying around and spamming status and recover and being annoying, Heracross being Heracross. Matchup isn't that bad, but it's not really in your favor, right? And we get into like another defensive team, which is Skarm lead again. And this is a defensive team that, while the matchup is pretty not good, it's still doable. It's not completely awful. It's still bad. Let's get it straight. It's still bad. But it's not unplayably bad like it is with Skarm, Celebi, Bliss, Doug. The second that you go against Skarm, Doug, and all of this, then you might as well just put down your mouse and walk away from the computer. It's not worth playing. Whereas this, not this, but this special offense can definitely beat this, for sure. So, Skarm, we've already talked about the whole Skarm interaction. More defensive Suicunes are interesting because, like, these Suicunes aren't really going to be hitting very hard, and therefore it is possible for your, like, Zapdos or your own Suicune to power through this later on in the game. It's still going to be annoying because it has Roar, and plus there's a Dugtrio in the picture who's also going to be annoying as hell. because all the stuff that besides Zapdos that can deal with this guy, is usually trapped by Dugtrio. So it's going to be a little interesting dance interaction thing that you're going to have to be doing, because obviously if you're leading with Zapdos, you know, Scarm, Zap, that's favored. But then they also have like their own bulky Zapdos to respond to you. You know. But then there's still the issue of bulky Zapdos by itself isn't usually a problem, because if you have setup Pokemon that could deal with it, you could set up over the course of the game, and usually in late game scenarios, you just power through Zapdos. It's a lot harder to do that when there's a Dugtrio in the picture. There's a Dugtrio that can come out at any point at once. You can't really set up on the majority of these Rest Zapdos, these Rest Zapdoses, because they almost always have Roar. So sub Calm Mind stuff really isn't going to be working. It is, the way it is. It's not. The matchup isn't ideal. It's possible, but it's not ideal at all. And for most special offense teams, this matchup is going to be pretty over. Like, if you go against this, that's it. If you do have Sand, like if you manage to set up Sand on like Zapdos or something, like if you have like a DD Tar in the back, it's a lot more manageable. But this is definitely a matchup where having Tyranitar at all helps, right? So, yeah, this is another matchup that's possible. Well, it's actually possible, unlike these two. These two are basically impossible, and you should forget about them. And if you run into them in a tour match, then you got completely and utterly C-teamed and wrecked. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. And this is fine, but it's difficult. And then there's this, which is defensive leaning, and it's annoying, but it's very, very much doable. It's just going to be harder to deal. It's just going to be hard to deal with as a whole. It's definitely doable, though. This is definitely like a defensive team where you aren't completely and utterly on the back foot and being like, oh shit, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Because here, Pursuit Tar isn't the best Zapdos answer in the world, because it's not it's not threatening Zapdos with an OHKO, so Zapdos can disrespect. Fortress isn't leading, and Fortress doesn't want to come in on a lot of the special attackers on special offense. In fact, the only opportunity that Fortress really has is coming in on Metagross, and even that is risky, because sometimes people like to use mixed Metagross on special offense, and that's a headache. If you can kill the Fortress immediately, that's awesome. But it's a lot more reasonable to get Blissey in, right? Because that's the whole goal here, is to remove Blissey. In fact, notice how outside of one team, every single one of these teams has a Blissey. And, it's not, that is to say that Jirachi is a bad Zapdos answer. It's not a good one. Don't get me wrong. Like, this Jirachi set isn't going to be, oh, yay, we're going to be able to switch into modest Thunderbolt. No, you don't want to be doing that. And also, offensive Zapdos can very easily fit in T-Wave. And a Jirachi that gets paralyzed is a Jirachi that's basically ruined. Because the whole thing with Jirachi is it's able to stall out a lot of the stuff with its Wish Protect nonsense. It's not really going to be able to do that as optimally if it's paralyzed, which it definitely doesn't want to happen. And if you're switching into Thunderbolts, there's always that 10% chance of getting a Thunderbolt para. So every time Jirachi comes in on a Zapdos, it's going to be forced to take those Thunderbolts as the game goes on. And plus, like I said, trapping Blissey is a lot more reasonable. So, once you get Blissey out of the way, you definitely have a game plan. Now, obviously, once you trap Blissey, Pursuit Tar is going to pursue you, for sure. It's going to come in and pursue you, and then Fortress is going to want to lay spikes as soon as possible because the person who's using this team doesn't want Doug Trio to come in again and potentially trap Tyranitar or Jirachi. They're going to be like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. They're going to want to try and win. And that's kind of like the biggest flaw of Doug Trio, by the way, is like even if you take out something like Blissey, it's highly unlikely that it's going to be able to take out anything else. Because not only are you giving your opponent like a free turn to do whatever they want, because it's a choice band Pokemon and it's throwing out like stab EQs, and there's a lot of immunities within the tier that's immune to stab EQ, so you're giving them a free turn to do something, and there's opportunity cost to doing that. So it's not always going to be as cut and dry as trapping Bliss. Obviously, as with the examples I've shown, trapping Blissey with the teams that I mentioned previously is basically impossible. And here, it's definitely doable, and it's probably going to happen. But then you have to kind of break through all of this. Your offensive Suicune is going to have to find a way to break through Jirachi and their opposing Suicune. And then, even if you do all of that, they have an Aerodactyl in the back. So it's definitely going to be this delicate dance of playing around threats and, deciding how endgame is going to go. But it's definitely doable. This is definitely a defensive matchup that you, the special offense user, are going to enjoy a lot more. So I mentioned earlier that while these matchups, some of them are completely awful and or unplayable, there is the question of how special offense can beat this. I'm going to show you how special offense can beat this. Or at the very least, you can create a special offense that is engineered to beat a team like this. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about this. How would I make a special offense team that is really good into this? Well, I'll show you. So first of all, we're going to make a special offense team that isn't engineered to beat Blissey. It's engineered to beat other stuff. And can trap Blissey if it wants to and has the opportunity to do so, but is designed in a way to beat, Celebi stuff, where you trap Celebi and then you have a bunch of special attackers that beat Blissey in the 1v1. And I think that's actually really doable. So, here's what we're going to do. So, we got Calm Mind Suicune. You could either do Crow or Sub. I'm going to do Sub, personally. We're going to do Sub Rain Dance Kun. So we're going to put Rain Dance in there and substitute a decent amount of special attack. Usually this is the benchmark for beating. Or actually, what I'm going to do, we're just going to max out that special attack. We're no longer going to be outspeeding the vast majority of Tyranitar or Metagross, but that really doesn't matter. We want the Suicune to beat, other stuff. You could speed creep to fear Jirachi, too. That's also, a good idea. Obviously, we're going to slot in Duck Trio. And from here, we got your Zapdos. That guy's mandatory. And we're going to slot in our own Celebi, but this Celebi is going to be pretty... What is it doing? Oh. This is going to be Celebi with Sub Calm Mind. So, we got Sub. We got Calm Mind. And this is actually going to be a Doug Trio without Bulk. We're going to make this guy Adamant. So, 31. And then... we're going to make him Adamant. That way, Doug Trio has maximum odds of killing Celebi. Because that's the biggest upside of using Adamant Doug Trio, is that you completely and utterly decimate Celebi. And we're still going to put Beat Up there. Now, you could slot in Rock Slide, but it's not mandatory at this point. I've just gotten so accustomed to running beat up that I'm not really gonna bother. So we're gonna have these guys. We have our sub-comma and Celebi. I haven't really decided the. Well, maybe we don't do that because I don't know. We'll decide here. But actually, you know what? We're gonna. Where's Jirachi? Here's Jirachi. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're gonna do a sub-comma Jirachi for sure. This is another Pokemon that beats Blissey. Actually, we want this guy to beat Calm Mind Blissey. So, yeah, we're going to slot in Roar there. And we're going to do something pretty evil with Zapdos. We are going to make Zapdos Toxic Protect. So, here's Protect. There's Thunderbolt. Hidden Power of our choice. We're still going to make Zapdos offensively leaning, of course, but it has better 1v1 potential into Bliss for sure. And from here, we slot in some. I was thinking about doing Kama and Jirachi, but then I remembered this team right here also has Calm Mind Blissey, so we need stuff that's specifically good against Calm Mind Blissey. So we're gonna look for a fighting type, and we're gonna look for a fighting type that isn't weak to Dugtrio, really. So Machamp is definitely one. Machamp does not care at all about Dugtrio, especially with a bulk up. It's not gonna give a shit about that. And then we're gonna put Zapdos in the lead slot, and then we're gonna EV Machamp too. We're gonna give Machamp, the usual EVs that Machamp does: max speed, adamant 209, bulk up, cross chop. I like EQ on Machamp personally, just to have a super hard hitting move against Metagross. Rock Slide is typically better though, of course. So we got that. This is already looking really solid, because you aren't really going to be caring about Ice Beam too much if you have a Dugtrio engineered to take out the Celebi. And from here, you're going to want not Sand, because Sand is going to limit your sub-Calm Mind Suicune and your Toxic Protect Zapdos, but we are going to get a Metagross in here, because Metagross is really good. And if it comes down to it, and you do have to trap Blissey, you have two really big attack stats to help you out with that. And then something else. What are we? We're kind of. Well, I mean, we are struggle bust against Celebi, but our team is engineered to completely destroy it. So I don't think it really matters if our team is weaker to it, as long as we just beat it outright. In fact, and we might be able to actually slot in another fighting type, actually. Yeah, actually, I have an idea. Darvtiros, you are a genius. Darvtiros, you are blessed with the best intellectual mind on planet Earth. I love you for it. Truth be told, we're still going to be soft in the Salamence, but we can make. If we have to, we can make this into ice. And we got a P2. Factel, this is going to be excellent to that team now, because we now have a Dugtrio that's going to Dug the Celebi, a P2 that's going to remove the, what's it called? The Dugtrio. So, I guess Gengar's a bit of an issue. Maybe we should use a fighting type that's better into Gar and maybe even Drill Peck. Oh. Oh! Oh, wait a minute. I just got the fucking most brilliant idea on Earth. How fast are you? Fast, slower than the champ, Jesus Christ. Your fat fucking ass, Hariyama. Am I an idiot? Oh yeah, it only goes up to 31. I'm dumb. Alright. we're gonna have two bulk up Machamps. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have two of them. That's, well, honestly, Brick Break. Yeah, Brick Break's probably better. And then, huh? Do I still go Focus Punch? Focus Punch might actually be the way to go. We're gonna suck in the Jirachi. Oh yeah, we're really gonna suck in the like Calm My Jirachi. But we could dog Jirachi. What am I talking about? I did say that we were going to divide and conquer. And I think I found a way to do it. P2 to... Maybe we don't need P2. Maybe we can just slot in something else. Something that deals with Ments very, very, very well. Swampert. Actually, yeah. Because, well, we're gonna get fucking cooked by mixed Ments, aren't we? But physical Ments, we're not gonna have any issues with that at all. And in fact, the attack stat for Swampert is also massive. So, and we're gonna be removing the hell out of Celebi anyway. So, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. Actually, maybe we don't do Curse, because we don't have Mag. Yeah, we do not have a Magneton, so maybe it would just be more advantageous to do something cool. Yeah, at least make it to where... maybe an offensive Swampert would be good here. One with Focus Punch. Because it's still going to be fine into physical Ments. Not as much, mixed. We'll figure out, mixed Ments. What was that? Yeah, sure. That was my dad. And yeah, Focus Punches a given. Yeah, so this is... I mean, one could say that this isn't really special offense. It's more of like a mixed offense type of deal, but it's close enough that I honestly think that the difference is irrelevant. Let's see. What's the EVs that Swampert uses to... Here, I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up live. Let's see. Blissey is 246 usually. We don't want to do that. We're gonna do this. Yeah, so 246. Probably go to Bolt Swampert. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think Blissey sometimes speed creeps, not often, but thank you. And maybe Calm Mind Blissey does speed creep, although I don't know. It also really doesn't matter at this point because look at the other Pokemon that are on the field, and it's not as if Milotic is going to be able to do anything. What is Milotic doing to this? Nothing. Milotic's dead. Oh, I got food now. I did not expect that to be the case, but oh, and okay. Need to put that 4th EV somewhere. Maybe I don't need Focus Punch. Maybe I can just be like a more standard maybe that would be more advantageous, because, I really don't care about Milo. If Blissey comes in on this, who cares? In fact, you know what I'm gonna do? Let's see. We need to be better into Mence and Jirachi, so use Protect, bro. Yeah, Protect is always gone, Zapdos, so there we go. Special offense. I'm gonna call it special offense because it still has special attackers in it. Yeah, I'm completely insane for thinking that that is okay, but you know what? I had to put my genius somewhere. Okay, so this is gonna be way harder. In fact, I don't think you can make a special offense that beats this. The other team you can. I don't think you can make one that beats this. The offense that you would end up having would be a million, 6 physical guys plus Duck Trio. I think with something like this, no matter what special offense you make, you're not beating this. It's dual blob. It's the ultimate counter team. There's not too much you can do. Now, something like this. Ooh, I'm going to have fun. So, first of all, we want to beat something with Skarm lead. I didn't mention Magnet Zap earlier. We're going to use Magnet Zap. Oh yes, we're going for it. Magnet Zap. Thunderbolt. Hidden Power Grass. Baton Pass. And then we'll decide on the last move later. Whether if it's Agility or something. Maybe Agility wouldn't be a bad idea. Agility Zapdos with like an item. Yeah. I had to take a bite of these nuggets, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll do Agility, actually. So, we are OHKOing Skarm now. 100%. Skarm is done. So, got that. I keep clicking on the wrong folder like an idiot. Alright. And we're gonna need sand. Can I not be an idiot for 2 seconds? Please and thank you. So we're gonna have a tar. And we're gonna... Where's Machamp? We're gonna use Machamp again. Yeah, there's Machamp. We're gonna use Machamp a second time, because Machamp is really, really good at tearing these non-fighting resist teams apart. Very, very good at it. Then we got Suicune. We need an electric resist somewhere, so I think we're going to use Celebi and Duck Trio. So, and then we'll make this like your basic bulk up Machamp. Not a bad idea, speed passing to Machamp. I think Sprinkler did that versus me. And that Pokemon Perfect Tour that I won a few months ago. Or a month, or however long it was. It was like a month or so ago, I know that. And, very first tour I ever won outside of Mushi League. It felt really good to win a tour, and I know that winning Kalos Invitational seems like a mad dream, but I think I can do it. I'm creative enough, I'm crafty, I just have to get my head out of the sand and outthink the people who are outthinking me. It's really all there is to it, is just build better and play better. I can definitely match everyone in Kalos Invitational in terms of play. I'd say that I'm solid when it comes to my plays. I do rate myself above average. And I wouldn't rate myself above average if I thought like I was like just mid or whatever. I really do think that, you know, I guess it's the difference between like a good player and like a great player, right? I heard BKC say that in a video once. Whether I'm good or not is debatable. I'll leave that for you guys to decide. You know, because maybe being a good player means something completely different. You know, and I wouldn't take it personally if you guys thought that I was, you know, not that great. You know, it is the way it is. And of course I gotta make it DD Tar, by the way. Ain't no way, bro. This is another team that's really sus in the Salamence. In fact, it's so sus in the Salamence, I'm tempted to make it Hidden Power Ice. We're not pussies. We'll do grass. Fuck it. I will not cower in the face of, you know. I refuse to cower in the face of something. I don't know. I thought about it, what I was gonna say, and then I completely lost it because I'm an idiot. All right, so there's team 1. Oh, team 2, and then, you know, in the rest of the rest of this, I think standard special offense does just fine. So we're finally gonna get into the replays. So. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but it feels like it's going to be a long one. So, we're going to analyze some of these replays. Some of them showing, you know, special offense at its strongest, and some of it showing just how, you know, bad some of those bad matchups I was talking about previously can be. So this is a Mushi League match between myself and Big Will. So I'm just going to let it play. So, here we have Salamence, here we have Tyranitar. You know, pretty standard matchup. He goes in the Swampert, I go in the Zapdos. Pretty standard switch in the Salamence, all things considering, because he could have, I'm going to pause it here. He could have gone into, like, Scarm, he could have gone into a Water type, he ended up going into a Water type, and then he pivoted into, Jirachi. Now, I don't know how I feel about that Hidden Power Grass. I think that Hidden Power Grass is way too hasty on my part, but I will justify it here in a bit. He does go into Jirachi, and you know, the thought process behind this entire interaction is that if he was going to go into Blissey, you know, because the team that I have is one of the teams that I showed you guys earlier, which was DD-Tar, Metagross, Agility Zapdos, Suicune, Raikou, and Dugtrio. And if Dugtrio gets the trap off and beats up Blissey, then it's going to end up trapping it no matter what. Blissey is definitely going to be dead and isn't going to be able to check Zapdos or Raikou at all for the rest of the battle. That was kind of like my rationale of clicking HP Grass there. Naturally, I baton pass out to see what he was going to do. He ends up doubling into Blissey. I'm guessing that he didn't want Jirachi taking a T-Bolt, you know, which I don't, you know, could be called a mistake, considering what ends up happening next. Now, obviously, Dugtrio gets the trap off. Blissey gets beaten up. Now, as you guys saw there, Blissey was at 13%. Had I gone into Doug and it had to take, like, an Ice Beam or whatever, then, and like Blissey beat Dugtrio, it would have only been at 13%. And as far as I know, Willie doesn't have any weather clear on this team, so this Blissey would have been dead. And that's all thanks to the sand. Sand very much made the difference here in this matchup. So, yeah, I successfully get the Blissey trap off. He has a Fortress. Meaning he also has a Pursuit Tar, which is very, very telling. Now here comes Tar. Tar gets crit and completely destroyed by Thunderbolt. And I think he pivots, or no, he just goes right into Jirachi. And I think I opt to go hard Doug Trio. I think I opt to go into Doug Trio. And a very hilarious situation ensues where Jirachi ends up stalling out Doug Trio, basically. Now, I misplay here, I think, pretty hard, because I EQ a bunch, and eventually I just get annoyed by Jirachi's presence, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with you. When I should have just stayed in, I should have clicked EQ all 16 times, because Doug Trio is going to die the next time it comes in because of the spike. You remember I was talking about how important that layer spike was earlier in the video? Well, here we go. This is kind of where it becomes relevant. And, me getting annoyed at Jirachi, because, fun fact, I dislike Jirachi, kind of bit me in the ass here, because it ended up making me do something that I probably shouldn't have. Now, I do DD with Tar here, and it is adamant, and Swampert gets fucking destroyed by EQ. It's a more defensive pert, so it's not getting O-code, but look at Swampert's health. Completely shattered. So, Swampert is going to have to protect a bunch here. I think this is where I decide to agility. Yeah, Zapdos is going to agility here. And do I T-Bolt predicting Jirachi? No, I don't, because I was afraid of what ended up happening was I was afraid of Swampert using Roar, because a lot of it was very clear that was like a more defensive Swampert. And it was going to end up messing me up if I didn't do anything about it. Here I substitute, and I Thunderbolt the Tar. I end up critting Tyranitar, too. That's crazy. And I switch out because I don't want to deal with Fortress EQ or anything like that. Fortress blows up, gets my Zapdos, and from here I have a pretty good winning position, but as you can see, Swampert is doing Swampert stuff. Now, here I really wish I kept Doug Trio around, instead of trying to trap the Jirachi and the whole chicanery of Jirachi ensued. I instead saved the Doug Trio for Swampert. That was very short-sighted of me. And this whole HP Grass interaction could have gone wrong too, because the Salamence could have very easily critted Suicune. So I did mess up here for sure. At least with Doug Trio, I did. I feel like I could have used Doug Trio a lot better in this matchup. But hindsight was 20/20, and kind of let my hatred of Jirachi get to me. But that's that. And this is the replay against Hyro. This is another team that you guys will recognize, one that I used in Mushi League as well. So we see a lead Zapdos versus Jinx. Now, disregarding the turn that you just saw, lead Zapdos versus Jinx is probably the most lopsided lead matchup possible. Because at least with Tyranitar, there could be situations where Zapdos is HP fighting or whatever, rare situations, but they happen. And then there's this, where the Zapdos user is almost always going to get screwed, and the Jinx user is almost always, 99.9% of the time, is always almost going to come out top. And usually the way how you deal with Jinx is just to let Zapdos die. So what Hyro does is Hyro attacks, expecting me to sleep. And I Ice Beam the Zapdos. Zapdos ends up being really bulky. Because if Zapdos wasn't max HP Calm, the Zapdos is dead. And then, Snorlax comes in on Lovely Kiss. Tyranitar comes in, then I go into Metagross. Pretty bad turn for Hyro all around. I mash. And then I find out, oh, that's like an Endeavor Swampert, because, as you guys can see, no leftovers. So, he goes into Zapdos, I Giga Drain the Zapdos. Do I Calm Mind here, or do I just Psychic? I use Psychic. I don't know, let's see. Because I actually forgot what I did here. Oh, I Psychicked him. Yep, and he T-Waves. Oh, he was just like some bulky T-Wave Zapdos, and he T-Waves me and then dies. Tar comes in, I go into Suicune. Looking like a DD Tar, or at least like an Adamant Tar. Adamant Tar, well, Hydro crit, so Tar just dropped dead. His, as you can see, this is just a complete slaughter. Claydol isn't going to get hit by Hydro, but he doesn't blow it up, which means that Claydol didn't have Explosion, or he didn't feel comfortable exploding. And then Claydol's dead. This is just a complete massacre at this point. There's nothing Hydro can really do because of how bad the matchup is, and very rarely does special offenses get like a matchup where it's this dominant. And hell, he misses Mash too, to add insult to injury. And then I completely forgot that I 6-0'd him. That's crazy. And then we get into a trickier matchup. This is another replay from this was from the last Pokemon Perfect tournament I was in, when I was versing a prominent DPP player named Crystal, and she prepped pretty well. She made teams that were naturally good into me, and I think I've showed this replay on the channel before, but I'm going to show it again. So, Lead Zapdos versus Lead Zapdos. I get really lucky with the para, and yeah, Zapdos gets paralyzed. I Thunderbolt again, and Zapdos is forced to rest turn 1. This is massive for me. Now, I don't have sand in this game, so the way how I play around this is very different from how I would usually play around it. Now, her special wall isn't Blissey, it's Registeel, so that is going to be a lot less comfortable taking on Zapdos, and Swampert gets destroyed by 10 Power Grass, and she protects here. I think I trapped the Swampert with Dugtrio. Yeah, the Swampert gets trapped, so no preserving Swampert, no playing around Zapdos, none of that. It's done. It's over with. So yeah, Mixed Ments is revealed. Of course, I always go into Suicune there. I don't know why she went into Tyranitar. I guess she just wanted to sand up at this point, because she realized, she wasn't really going to win without it. And, Registeel ends up taking a +1 Hydro. Doesn't really take it that well. And then I go into my own Swampert. I believe this is my offensive Refresh Pert. Yeah, this is my offensive Refresh Pert. Offensive Refresh Pert is awesome, by the way. So I start trying to Hydro down the Fortress. She is like, well, I might as well try and get up my spikes, and she does. She doesn't have a really good water resist, so I did kind of get lucky with the matchup. She blows up, Swampert gets taken out, she gets her 2 layers of spikes, that's really good for her. Salamence, of course, comes in, because that's like the most offensively threatening Pokemon that she's got. She decides to bail, like any reasonable person would. Tyranitar comes in, and Tyranitar is getting slammed with modest Thunderbolts over and over and over again. Pursuit Tar infamously doesn't really do well into modest Zapdos at all. Tyranitar goes down. And like I said before, these more defensive-leaning, like sort of balanced or defensive-focused teams, special offense excels at, like, destroying these. So it was definitely... Oh, and I even have a fucking Regice. That's crazy. I wonder what team this is, because I don't remember building this. The matchup is kind of lopsided, I will say. Now, I don't know if she had, like, T-Wave or Toxic or anything like that, so we'll never know what move she clicked. It was probably Toxic. And I reveal Moltres, which, if the game wasn't over already, it definitely is over now, because ain't no way she's going to be able to beat Moltres, without statusing it or doing anything. And I bet she did click a status move, and I just got lucky. Now, Moltres here actually does really well into Zapdos with the stab fire moves and such. I get roared out into Regice. The spikes are doing their work. Now, I trapped the Registeel successfully, which, I'm pretty happy I nailed that play. And sometimes Registeel does run counter. Sometimes it likes to fit other moves. And it's a move slot. It does not have counter. It has Seismic Toss. So Registeel gets trapped. Zapdos comes in. Because of the sand, Zapdos is going to have a harder time dealing with, defensive guys. And then I get paralyzed, which really sucks. I get roared there. A bunch of chicanery happens where we're just kind of stalling out and waiting. She keeps phasing my Pokemon out, and I finally beat her. So, this is special offense when it has like a good matchup, right? They tend to do pretty well into like these balance-oriented cores, or even some of like the more offensive ones. As you can see, I've shown Fortress twice now. Now I'm about to show you what happens when special offense gets a horrible, awful, garbage matchup. So here's Lead Suicune. Lead Suicune is calm-minded. Lead Suicune is doing what it does best, being a massive threat. Goes out, goes into Celebi. And my knee-jerk reaction, because I was kind of hoping that it wasn't Celebi Bliss, which it ended up being Celebi Bliss. He Leech Seeds. I end up substituting, which is a pretty decent move. At this stage of the game, I get into Dugtrio safely, so I safely trap the Celebi. So at this point of the game, I'm like, okay, he's got Celebi, he might have like a Skarmory, a Claydol, a Dugtrio. I already like have in mind what sort of team he has. I'm hoping and praying that he doesn't have a Blissey. And I think I mess up here. Yeah, and here's the Dugtrio. So, like, at this point in the match when Dugtrio was revealed, I was like, okay, Kurtz has, like, has a special offense team of his own. Because, Suicune, Celebi, Dugtrio, I'm like, okay, this is probably, like, an offensive-oriented squad. He might have, like, Leech Seed 3 attack Celebi or something like that. That would make sense why he has Giga Drain instead of HP Grass, because if he had HP Grass, then it would have been like a telltale of like what sort of team that he has. Whereas him having Giga Drain, I'm like, okay, he probably is like Leech Seed 3 attacks or a Calm Mind pass set or something along those lines. So the rationale was like, okay, traps my dog, standard stuff is going on right now. I was still pretty confident, and then this happens. I was pretty confident that I could beat Kurtz here. Keep in mind, I'm down a game because Kurtz, I think 2-0'd me. It might have been. I think I beat Kurtz maybe. Here, I'll actually check on my phone. He either 2-0'd me or this was like a game 3. I think he did 2-0 me though. Let's see. I think this is game 2, and I think I'm like down a game. And I was fairly confident going into this like game. So, give me a second because I'm having to like scroll up and check. Oh no, he 2-0'd me. Okay. Yeah, when Blissey was revealed here, I knew I was completely screwed and I got suckered. This was like an example of, the worst possible thing that could have happened, which is like, oh my god, he's got Celebi Bliss Dugtrio, which is, as we went over before, these kind of special offense teams are not well equipped at all to deal with these type of teams, and there's a Jirachi, and it looks like he does have like some sort of like counter team sort of thing where he baits me into thinking that's a special, and hell, just to add insult to injury, Jirachi gets a fucking burn because it's Jirachi and Jirachi's cheap. So yeah, this game is super over. There's no way I'm gonna be able to find an out for this. Yeah, and it's Calm Mind Blissey, and that's that. Yeah, so awful matchup for sure. And then we get this, which, so to give context, because this game happened very recently. This is a player named O Jr. I knew that he was pretty good at the game. He played in ADV, that he had a pretty good record going into this. He was 2-0 before he fought me. And this is game one, And I think game one is very important because this sets the precedent of what happens. What you're about to see is probably the greatest instance as to why these type of teams are flawed. Now, to be frank, yes, I did bring a team that is 6-0'd by Calm Mind Blissey. Yes, I built this team because before, this game happens, and I was able to get all of his ADPL replays in his previous seasons of Mushi League, including this current season of Mushi League, and I noticed trends that he liked Snorlax, he liked Claydol, Skarm stuff, he liked balanced teams, he liked offense teams, the sort of stuff that special offense is really good into. And I went into this game with the notion that, okay, I'm going to be able to break a few rules in the team builder. Like, yeah, I'm going to be weak into Calm Mind Bliss, but he's not going to bring Calm Mind Bliss. I'm going to be fine. He's not going to bring anything that's going to 6-0 me. I'm going to be able to get this. I'm going to be able to go 3-1 this week. What instead happened was this. So I see a lead fortress. I hydro pump it. And I'm like, that didn't really take any damage at all. So I Calm Mind here, predicting Blissey to come in because I want to force Blissey to heal, right? And then that happens. And it was at this point in the game I was like, okay, well, yeah, the game is very much over because I, loaded this team under the assumption that it was gonna, and I forfeit in, 9 turns, and this battle ended immediately. And that's because the team got 6-0'd by Calm Mind Blissey, and there was no way in hell I was ever going to beat it. And it just kind of goes to show that, you very well much can break rules, as long as you're not me. But, this team, this one that I have here is actually this one. Where is it? This one here, which is, I changed it up a bit. I ended up going with lead Zapdos, so I match up into lead Skarm, because after that game I was like, yeah, I definitely want to match up into the lead Skarm a bit better. I probably should, you know what, we're going to give this thing Magnet too. Actually, no, I'm not. I think Leftovers on the Zapdos is actually really good here, because longevity is longevity, and longevity is God. But, yeah, it did not go well at all, and in fact, the game that he did bring, Lax, Claydol, whatever, was the game I didn't bring special offense, and that also went very poorly, because the matchup was just as not great. So, he dicked on me in the team builder. It happens. But it just kind of goes to show that, special offense definitely likes breaking rules in the team builder. And the reward for breaking those rules is potentially very massive. Because with Big Will, during my week with Big Will, I definitely broke rules in the team builder, and it paid off for sure. Like, the reward was massive. I 2-0'd him. Here, I didn't get rewarded at all. I got completely and utterly destroyed by Calm Mind Blissey. And apparently he had a Lapras here, which, would have been annoying for sure. Because, that the team that I made to specifically match up well into Calm Mind Blissey stuff, that whole thing with Suicune would have been ruined because it would have been completely walled by Lapras. But on the flip side, his team would have gotten destroyed by Hariyama and Machamp holding hands and completely decimating him. I don't remember if he has a Salamence or not. I'm pretty sure that Salamence would have gotten overwhelmed over the course of the game by the task of dealing with those two. If only I made that team earlier in the week, but that is the way it is. Anyway, I've said, I think, my 2 cents on special offense. There will definitely be more videos made on special offense, either sometime soon or later in the month or, whenever. Because I actually do want to make videos on different team styles, because, I am going to have to diversify once plans are announced, because let's be honest, me, the special offense guy, it doesn't matter how much I try to outplay. Chances are a situation like this is going to happen. It doesn't... I'm the only person in this situation, though, where because I main special offense, I have to worry about its limitations way more than someone else does. If you watch this video and you want to succeed in tournaments and you want to use a style that's consistently good at being very strong into balanced teams and even some stall stuff, and definitely good into other offense, use special offense. It's really good. Anyway, that's all I gotta say for now. I will see you guys next time.